both Mariano and Jen, who I'm just adding to the stream now, from MakerDAO. And MakerDAO is a complete OG in the crypto space. They underwrite billions of dollars in value across all protocols of all different blockchains and layers and solutions for Ethereum and Polygon. So pleasure to have you both with me, Mariano and Jen. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Emma, for the invitation.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Great. Look, well then let's get started. So just for everyone listening in, if you have any questions, join the DigitalAX Discord, drop them in the AMA channel. There's already a ton coming through now. And we're also running a really cool giveaway with MakerDAO inspired Decentralized digital fashion jackets. So yeah, make sure when you're asking your question to add your wallet address, and we'll be gifting those at the end of the session. So Jen and Mariano, to get started and really give everyone listening in more, I guess, of a background around not just MakerDAO, but what you guys focus on, which is very much stablecoins and decentralized stablecoins. I know that a lot of creators and designers listening in, that's a new term for them of what is a stablecoin, because when we think about crypto, there's often a connotation with volatility and large price swings and price movements. So can you start by just describing, I guess, what is a stablecoin, why is that important, and then how do people use that?
Yeah, sure. A stablecoin, well, as its name says, right, it's a coin that it's try to be stable, right? It is always close to a $1 in value, right? And you have different stable coins. These stable coins can be fiat-backed collateralized, or it can be, for example, crypto collateralized, right? DAI, it's in this case crypto collateralized. It has a multitude of different collaterals that allows it to have this value always close to $1. And they are a really important piece of the DeFi ecosystem, right? Because as you said, you have other coins that may change their value, and they can be a little bit, how do I say this? It's like, it's difficult to use them if you want to pay for something, because later on maybe you can regret if the price of that coin may go up to the sky and you ended up paying like a lot of money for an item. But in that case, with a stable coin, it's always the price that you are paying, right? And also with DAI, what happened in the past is that allows to other applications to connect themselves, right? And that is why kind of like the money Legos term came to be, because DAI was the first decentralized stablecoins that it was implemented by several applications through the DeFi ecosystem, and then users and people start to realize, hey, I can have like one single money or one single transaction to be able to participate in all these kind of things, right? And yeah, I mean, that is why stablecoins are such an important piece of this ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. And Jen, to kind of build on that more, so like Mariano mentioned, that people can think of DAI as a stablecoin like USDT, USDC, where it's really small fluctuations in price, or it maintains a peg like DAI does to, say, the US dollar. Can you describe more about the difference between a centralized currency like fiat and then something that is decentralized like DAI? What is the difference to that, and why is it important that we do have a decentralized stablecoin? Like, why don't we just keep using USDT or USDC even, or fiat currencies themselves?
Yeah, that's a good question. So kind of going back to the origins of MakerDAO. So one of the co-founders, Rune Christensen, he was really excited about Bitcoin as a technology and what it could do from like a financial innovation perspective, but he realized the limitations with the volatility. So when he and the technical co-founder at the time thought about creating what is now known as DAI, they wanted to take the core decentralized attributes of Bitcoin, which is what they fell in love with and which really appealed to many people and was kind of the whole point of this new way to think about money. And so what they did was take that decentralized aspect, but just bring stability to it, and like Mariana said, make it usable in everyday use cases, or just in more predictable ways. So the main difference between the centralized stablecoins, the fiat-backed stablecoins, and DAI is just that. So DAI is actually not backed by a dollar, an actual dollar that's sitting in a bank somewhere or sitting in a trust somewhere. All DAI is actually created from other crypto assets. So, when you go to the Maker protocol, you're essentially bringing any of the accepted crypto collaterals currently in the system and locking them up, putting in more than you're going to get in DAI, so over collateralizing the amount. And then from that value you brought in, you're actually creating a stable coin, and that is done without going to a bank. That's done without the Central Reserve getting involved. That's done without any KYC. So that's kind of like the real fundamental difference and the magic of a decentralized stablecoin like DAI versus a fiat-backed stablecoin like USDC, where every single digital dollar is backed by a hard dollar, or a treasury bond that is accounted for in an institution. So whether that's a bank or some other location.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a really important point that you touched on about bringing those values of decentralization, like what we originally saw with Bitcoin and that community, but then as it bridged out into Ethereum, and now we have today this whole bustling, bizarre ecosystem, but making sure that they stay at the core of what we're building and why we're building. So, DAI is one part of kind of the Maker ecosystem and underwrites a lot of the value, but as you kind of went into, there's more complex mechanisms around how DAI is able to actually maintain its stability and its peg. So could you speak more about this? And, either Jen or Mariano, feel free to both jump in. I'll propose the question to both of you. But how does it actually work where people interact with the protocol and they lock up Ethereum to actually then mint their DAI? Could you take us through more of this process and how the stability is maintained?
Yeah. Marianne, do you want to do it, or I can? We can go back and forth. I think you're muted.
Yeah, that's good. Let's go. Like a ping pong.
Yes. Okay, so I'll start. I'll be the first pong. Okay, so what happens? So everything starts right now at the Maker smart contract level. So there's a number of different interfaces one can go to interact with the Maker smart contract. Oasis is one that was initially built under the product team of the Maker Foundation. So just as a side note, our teams, well, Mariano and I, who are on the growth team, now work entirely under the MakerDAO community. So prior to this kind of transition, we were working for the Maker Foundation, which was the organization that kind of bootstrapped the protocol up until this spring, and now has dissolved as long intended. And now the entire protocol, every decision made, and the continuation of scaling it is done through core unit teams like ours, which is growth, that are basically, managed by the DAO. So we're living and breathing the DAO life right now. So a person goes to Oasis, they have some ETH, and they don't want to sell their ETH. So this is another detail that's like really important, because the Maker protocol allows somebody to get a stablecoin, the DAI stablecoin, without having to actually sell something else for it. So if you're long ETH and you don't want to get rid of it, Maker makes a lot of sense for you. So you could go in, you lock up your ETH, and depending on which vault you're using, we call the smart contracts vault, where people lock up their collateral. You have a collateralization ratio. So each asset is assigned by the risk core unit team, a collateralization ratio, a stability fee, a liquidation ratio, and a couple other parameters that inform the risk profile of that particular asset. So ETH, let's say, is 150% collateralization ratio. So you put your ETH in and you generate DAI from that. So you're getting a little bit less DAI than the amount you're putting in ETH because you're over collateralizing it. And the reason you're doing that is because ETH is volatile. And so you don't want to have to worry in every minute that the amount that you have locked up might fall below a certain amount. So you kind of have this buffer, and the system has this buffer to maintain, a value parity between the amount you lock up and the amount you generate. So then you generate your DAI and you have DAI, and you can do whatever you want with that. You can turn that into actual dollars. You can turn that into another cryptocurrency. You can use that to buy NFTs. You could do whatever your heart pleases. When you are finished with that and you want to give back your initial collateral of ETH, you repay your DAI, and then that unlocks your ETH back for you. So when you do that, you pay what is called a stability fee, and that's essentially a fee to the system, a borrowing fee, and that fee will vary based on the risk profile of that asset, the collateral asset. So that's what happens in a normal kind of uneventful situation. Now, in an eventful situation where there might be like a major market crash and the price of ETH drops dramatically in a quick period, and you may not have the means to either top up your collateral or repay your DAI in time, what happens is the system will automatically liquidate you. So it will sell off your collateral, the ETH, until it recoups enough of the amount of DAI that is kind of out of balance based on that drop in the price of ETH. So this is all taking place in an automated way, and there's different kind of participants in the ecosystem that actively participate in liquidation events where they are coming with a DAI and buying that collateral that's being liquidated with DAI, and then that DAI goes back to make that position whole. So these are kind of like the fundamental ways that somebody uses the system. But those three key areas of what the collateralization ratio is, what the stability fee is, and what the liquidation ratio is, keep everything in check, right? So there's Marion, if you want to kind of add color as to
that's a perfect explanation. It's just a brief is you have a system that has collaterals, and those collaterals have a profile, right? And according to that profile is how much DAI you can get out of that collateral, and the system will always need to be in balance, right? There will always be more collateral than DAI in circulation, right? So what Jen was explaining about the liquidations was exactly that. Once one of the collaterals is seeing that they are below these risk profiles, the system starts to work and starts to liquidate, right? They're selling bit by bit the collateral until the system is in balance again, right? So in that way is how DAI can maintain its price close to $1, right? Without needing to have a dollar in an account.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned around the over collateralization. So this is a really interesting topic because what we're seeing now with a lot of projects is they're experimenting more with partially collateralized loans, even per se, or even we have open protocol and partially collateralized options. Is that something that MakerDAO is looking into as well, or even that the current infrastructure and architecture of the system could handle, quote unquote, is this idea of, say, under collateralized DAI being minted, or is it always that it would have to be over collateralized in order to kind of maintain the peg and the balance as you described?
Yeah, it's always, everything depends on the community, because we are a DAO and that kind of new products needs to be voted by the community. In the short term, I would say that we don't have any plans as a DAO to present a product with those features, But what we do have right now, it's different ways to mint DAI, right? For example, we have the PSM. PSM is a smart contract in which you can mint DAI directly with one stablecoin, right? And today we have the USDC, and also very soon we will be adding the PAX dollar, and soon many more. And the idea is always to look for capital efficiency, right? An under collateralized dollar or over collateralized crypto dollar, it depends on the capital efficiency, right? So yeah, what we are looking right now is how to improve this capital efficiency with the PSM. But yeah, regarding to under collateralized loan, I think that is something that the community needs to first propose as a project, and then develop and later be voted.
Mm-hmm. And Jen, one point that you also mentioned was the idea that once you have DAI, you can do literally whatever you want with it. You can sell it, you could borrow it, you could lend it. What are the biggest use cases that you're seeing today for the adoption and usage of DAI? And then to kind of bridge on that as well, I know that you guys launched in early 2020 the DAI Gaming Initiative. So that's something very interesting, and kind of, promoting more of this idea of the metaverse and gaming, play to earn, as we're seeing, projects like Axie really grow and expand in the past few weeks. So could you speak more about, I guess, where are the use cases today and where's the most activity, but how the community and protocol is further expanding that? And then, where do you see it going? Because it's a really interesting thing with a stable coin. It's kind of like the sky's the limit. And I guess, one of the big initiatives of MakerDAO is to have as broad adoption as possible of the stablecoin as the token. So it really is interoperable in every transaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the answer to that question, I think, keeps getting bigger and changing, at least for me, in the last year or so, because, a couple of years ago, let's just say, even last summer, DeFi summer, DAI was probably like the #1 used stablecoin in, DeFi protocols, right? And so there was like a massive demand for DAI to use in all these different protocols to earn interest, and do a lot of the typical DeFi and trading activities. Now this year, with the whole explosion of NFTs and now even more gaming, I think, is coming up on the cusp of exploding. We've been focused on, making DAI available and useful to those ecosystems. And the basic, value proposition of DAI as this decentralized global dollar really doesn't change, whether you're trading it, using it in a pool. The transactability of this global currency that everybody can identify is a value equal to $1 makes a lot of sense. So if you are a creator and you want to list your items in ETH and a stable coin, and you're living in Argentina, it might be really appealing for you to not only accept ETH, and you might want to have a portion of your income in a stable asset like DAI, because DAI allows you, again, this predictable savings, right? So, and also that's like the flip side is like a collector too. Like if I'm a collector and I want to buy something, I may not want to part with my ETH today because I'm expecting the price to continue to go up. Excuse me. And I'd rather transact in a fixed amount that I've decided, like, I think I want to buy this thing for X amount of dollars, and I know I want to pay X amount of dollars today, and I expect that I would want to pay that next week. So the ability for DAI to, kind of transcend across these other verticals, I think is really, is really compelling, and it's kind of like, kind of confirms our vision that DAI is this global currency that could be used by anyone, anywhere, for many different purposes. Mm-hmm. And I'll let Mariano talk about the gaming side, because that's his passion point. But even, thinking more on the B2B institutional side, having the Maker protocol, again, more of the vault mechanism where somebody could, lock up an asset and generate credit from their own assets is really interesting. So, I would say like the picture of users are, again, those, native DeFi users, traders, now the creator, kind of space, finding, this appealing global decentralized asset to use, either to take in or pay out. And then finally, kind of more B2B, where institutions can see this as a really great access to credit.
Yeah, and regarding, for example, play to earn, this is something that I'm really excited about. We started working really early with Axie Infinity in Maker. In fact, we were one of the very first sponsors of their seasons, in which they have this thing called Axie Die, in which players, they can gather this die that these little axes were dropping in the game, right? And we start seeing from that point, it's like how huge this environment could be, right? We believe that when more and more companies starting to use NFTs in their game, not only not only in the play to earn sense, right? Just an NFT, like the first step, right? We are seeing like massive markets of skins, such as in CS:GO or Fortnite or even League of Legends or Dota. We believe that this could be one of the see before, right? We never saw before, and this is, I believe, it's going to be even bigger than the thing that we are seeing right now.
Yeah, no, it's a really significant time as well. Like you said, people in the Philippines and so on and so forth that even lost their jobs in the pandemic. Now they're engaging in a community, an ecosystem, an economy like Axie Infinity, and earning quadruple the value that they would have previously. Even with kind of a more traditional career or job path. So it's definitely a bigger shift within the market of seeing, well, how does Web3 underwrite more value?
Yes.
And I guess the reach as well. Like you said, these economies that beforehand might have found it really difficult to access value, to access even jobs and a stable kind of income, they're seeing that. So it's really exciting just to see the extent of where this is going to go. But it leads me kind of to my next question as well, and very much in the spirit of Fashion Week. There's new kind of models coming out in terms of like where to earn, in a sense, or how do you actually unlock more liquidity within fashion itself, digital fashion, physical fashion, but backed by NFTs. So with that said, and kind of finding the sweet spot between DeFi and gaming, is there any outside of, you mentioned kind of the Axie and the DAI airdrops through the game there, is there any other use cases that you've seen that have been really interesting at the intersection of DeFi and gaming? And even when we think about more complex financial products merging into the world of fashion or gaming, is that something that you've seen so far, or that, even more Web2 projects, companies, brands have kind of approached MakerDAO and said, well, how can we kind of integrate? What's this about? Yeah, like just what's kind of been the landscape at the moment around integration of decentralized stablecoins?
Yeah, for example, right now we are looking very much into all different metaverse that we have in the blockchain space, and there's something really cool because you can have like the different sets of metaverse, right? In this spectrum, you will have metaverse that are very much for gaming, right? In which you have skins and you have all these cosmetic things that the characters may wear. And you can have on the other side of the spectrum things that are purely, like a second character, pretty much like it was Second Life a couple of years ago, right? That it could be something very similar to what Decentralized is doing, for example, right? So in this whole spectrum, you have like a lot of different opportunities that we are seeing in terms of design and in terms of business model that this assets is bringing, right? We are seeing, what I was saying that I really love is different sets of NFTs that allows you to have a one special NFTs, right? You can have, we are seeing right now a fashion show of wearables, and something that I'm really, really interested on is in augmented reality fashion. I believe that augmented reality fashion is going to be like unbelievably huge. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's kind of a lot of new ideas around that. Actually, it's interesting for Fashion Week as well. We've got some AR fashion that we've been distributing and kind of putting around. So that's as well like another industry when we think about, not just AR fashion, but what about on-chain AR fashion? It's these crazy new models and how do we kind of bring more value around that? So with that said, I want to kind of shift the conversation more to the governance side of MakerDAO, because this is a huge aspect of your protocol. And very recently, you became fully decentralized, as Jen, you mentioned, and you really kind of shifted from the foundation model to now being governed by the community. So what's that kind of been like? Because it's very interesting. I mean, there's so many DAOs kind of popping up at the moment. And people forming left, right, and center. I mean, if you go on Twitter, you see on the feed, it's like a DAO for this, a DAO for that. So yeah, how's that transition been from kind of going to having a more concentrated community model to now it being fully decentralized? Has there been challenges to it that is maybe something that others, designers, creators, people listening in, when they think about forming a DAO, that they should be looking out for, or that is really important to consider? And especially when you think about from the MakerDAO sense, you have billions of dollars kind of locked up in the vaults and the smart contracts, and decisions can be critical at times. How are you guys navigating this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could start off on the topic, I guess. So yeah, the transition has been pretty, easy because Maker as at a protocol level has already been, working off of the community decision kind of mechanism. So anything, even during the foundation, that was related to stability fees or collateralization ratios or anything that touched the protocol still required a voting process, right? And that included anybody in the community holding MKR, just not foundation people. So we had this kind of, this model in place. The only difference with the foundation was that you had this coordinated structure with different teams like ours, biz dev or marketing or, risk and smart contract developers. And then of course, legal. And then you had a hierarchy that kind of rolled out the strategic vision. So things were just a little bit neater in that way. You could look at it as being a little bit neater because who is responsible for what, okay? And like who's setting the strategy. And so once that kind of structure disappeared, there was still the people in place, but just now in the form of these core units working under the DAO, kind of continuing the tasks that we were already doing. So now the coordination is just entirely through different things like forums, like the Maker Forum is where all the conversations about everything takes place. There's public calls, so you could kind of tap in and hear what people are thinking, what ideas are being proposed, and there's always a way to kind of connect through different channels. I would say the challenge is probably, and it's not specific to Maker, but I think it's just like the human element, right? Like people are people, whether you're in a DAO or you're not in a DAO, and people are, have emotions and have different opinions. And so when you're trying to coordinate around decisions, the human element will always come up, and that could be good or bad. So I think, overall, I guess my advice to those thinking about forming a DAO is it is a really unique and powerful way to organize a community, but it doesn't mean that you won't have challenges of dealing with human beings, right? So I think as long as your incentives are aligned and everybody is participating for a shared goal, you get through those little human hiccups. But I'm really, I guess, bullish on kind of how DAOs are transforming workplaces in general. The ability, especially for creators, to just kind of mobilize around an idea and kind of start working together, figuring out how to incentivize contributors, fundraise, get resources much quicker than in a traditional way is really, really powerful. So I would say, like, for the creator communities, definitely think about DAOs, but just be warned, they're not, of course, they're not perfect. Nothing is. And so I think it's just, as long as you have a level head about that, they're a really interesting dynamic to use. I don't know, Mariana, what's your thought around that?
No, yeah, I mean, totally agree with that. And in fact, it's something like pretty new, right? So we are yet, we still need yet to see how all these interactions between people, between anons, between, this whole thing, it's pretty new because maybe you are interacting with someone in a Discord or in a forum, but you don't know how many people are behind that nickname, right? It could be a group, for example, right? Let's talk. I mean, designers, right? Maybe we are talking with people from a DAO that is dedicated to design clothing, but in reality, maybe it could be like a boutique or maybe a group of designers from a different part of the world, right? And this creates like a whole new thing of interactions that for me is like really, really interesting.
No, and it's interesting actually that point. I want to kind of dive into a little bit deeper, but like you said, anons, and that it's becoming much bigger in crypto. I mean, it was always one of these principles within the crypto community, is that having kind of the right to anonymity or the right to privacy, which within Web2 we often don't have. So and that's just compounded with NFTs and profile photos and what we're seeing today. So is that something that's been a challenge in terms of when you think about, I guess, just maintaining security within a DAO, and like you said, okay, ensuring that everyone's incentives are aligned? Have you experienced anything where there's been, like kind of a malicious attack or a coordinated malicious attack attempted to, I don't know, even if that was pass a governance proposal that maybe actually majority of the community didn't want passed, but then, like kind of group coordination mechanics against the DAO? Anything that's been experienced by Maker to this stage, or not as of yet?
No, not yet that type of coordination, but we do see different things that are kind of labeled as opportunism inside the DAO, because you often see some proposals regarding funding different actions that very well that person is not part of the community, right? It's just their first message asking for money to do like a big thing, right? That is not an attack per se, but it's something that if the community is not well prepared to start filtrating those kind of things, it could deplete the DAO at some point, right? So yeah, one of my advice to most DAOs there is to keep an eye on who is part of the community, right? The core community, and who is contributing to the community, right? Because I believe that is the most important aspect of being part of a community, contributing, right? I think that we will see a lot of kind of free riders of that, and some of them will also ask for money from the DAO. And I think that the community needs to be like strong enough to start filtrating those type of members.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And so we've got a number of questions coming in on our Discord as well, so I'll get to those. But I also want to bring it back to onboarding, education, and growth, because this is a big topic within just broader Web3 and crypto as well. So is there anything that, the DAO itself within Maker and DAI as well? I mean, that's a really strong interoperability channel of, as like you said, bringing people that might see crypto as really volatile, now having the option of a decentralized stablecoin and bringing them into these different use cases. But is there anything that the DAO is working on specifically to focus on how can we continue to improve onboarding, strengthen education within the space? Do you work with even creators or designers on, I guess, creating more materials or generating more materials around even not just DAI, but kind of the broader principles that you guys work on?
So that's a really interesting idea or suggestion of like working with creators more broadly to kind of like help educate people, because they'll obviously be reaching people that we may not be already, which is more of like a DeFi, kind of core audience. We do, in the past during the foundation, we actually had a grants program. So there were grants available for, protocols and teams to apply for. And, that was kind of a way to kind of strengthen the mission of what Maker is doing, motivate people to build on top of us, integrate DAI in a very specific way in their protocol. The grants program is kind of just being reevaluated, and we're trying to figure out as a community, like what's the best way to activate it. So grants, I think, is one means of kind of reaching out beyond our core spaces and inviting people to, especially developers, to try building with our products. But yeah, in terms of education, I personally would love to do more things around this, and whether it's, just, if it's like speaking opportunities in less crypto native circles, especially like within the fashion world, and tapping into other creators who are just coming into the space, whether it's students, even, gosh, I would say even like at the high school level, college level, greeting them where they are. And kind of helping them see what the opportunity is for them to start thinking about how they could, look at finances differently. How can they start saving? What are the things they could start doing within this new financial paradigm that they can't do in the traditional world? So yeah, I think, there's a lot of different touch points we could be participating in. And now that we're kind of newer into this DAO phase, I'd invite anybody even listening to reach out to us if you have suggestions.
Yeah.
Great. And then a few questions now from those listening in. So someone's asking, what are some of the things that the DAO votes on? So some say specific examples. I know that you guys posting on Twitter around kind of budgets and these kind of things that go to proposals. But yeah, what are some of the things that the DAOs vote on, and what are some of the internal operations that are focused upon as well?
Well, there's like a lot of things to vote on MakerDAO. You can start voting on different collateral proposals. You can vote on the budget for each core units. Core units are this group that take a certain task of the DAO. You can vote pretty much for anything that is discussed on the forum, right? We have a governance flow that it goes something like this. You have you present a proposal on the forum that is called signaling, and that signaling needs to have a survey with yes, no, or abstain, right? If community picks interest on that signaling and it's approved, then that same exact vote it's taken to on chain, right? In which maker holders need to vote with their maker. But the outcome of that voting doesn't make any change of the system. It's just like an on-chain vote to have like the sentiment of the token holders around that subject, right? If that vote passes, then goes the same vote again on chain, but this time it will make changes on the system. It's called executive vote because it will execute changes, right? So you have these three like steps, right? The forum, the first on chain vote that does not make any change to the system, and the chain and the vote that makes change to the system, right? And you can visit vote.makerdao.com and you will have all the history of past and present votes that the system right now is facing.
Mm-hmm. And then how does that voting, just to get a bit more specific as well, how does that voting work? Is it purely token-based voting, or do you have kind of a weighted system as well? And I mean, what is your perspective on this in terms of balancing fairness and also new users being able to come in? How does that work in terms of going from the signaling then to the executive vote?
Do you have a core team called governance that is taking charge of translating all these things that are happening in the forum to on chain once the community approves that? And then you will have the phases on the votes, right? You have, for example, in the first on chain vote, it's 15 days that the vote is live on the web, right? And most of them needs to have at least 10,000 MKR as a kind of a quorum, okay, to be approved. And then it will, if it's approved, it will pass to this second instance in which is executive vote that it will be approved, right? So far, what we are seeing is that we have a growing participation, right, for the voters, but it's something that we always need to encourage, right? And this is something that we are seeing in many DAOs, that we are having delegates, so you don't have to constantly follow what is going on the forums and the DAO. You can delegate your votes to a delegate that its work and its mandate is to keep up with all the things that are happening on the DAO, and then you can, in that way, your voting power is being used, right?
Mm-hmm. And then another question we have, someone's saying they recently saw that MakerDAO is bridging to RWA. Can you explain further about this?
Where?
RWA. I can ask.
RWA.
Our real world assets, I think.
Real world assets.
Sorry, RWA. Sorry. I
Good spot, Jen. Yeah, I didn't pick that up either. But yeah, real world assets. I'm sure that's what it's meant.
Yeah, real world asset is such an opportunity for Maker, because we believe that the growth to reach 1 trillion DAI in circulation will come with a mix of different collaterals, not only crypto collaterals, right, but also real world assets. For example, right now we have a test for real estate loans on the system, and we are working to have another one for a solar farm to produce clean energy. And yeah, we are seeing different proposals regarding real world assets that are like really, really exciting, because it will open the door to a new type of industries to get financed by blockchain with transparency, and obviously with much better rates than the legacy financial instruments.
So look, Jen and Mariano, that kind of brings us near to the close of our session. So with that said, is there anything, any closing thoughts that you have or would like to leave the creators and designers with? I know, Jen, that you mentioned encouraging people to reach out to you guys. What is the best way that they can do that? Is it through the official forums, or what platform is best for them to use?
Yeah, they could reach out to us. So our Maker Growth Twitter, I think, would be good. That's a great place to just stay up to date with things we're doing on our growth team. And so partnerships, explainers on various parts of the Maker ecosystem. It's like a really good resource. So you could shoot us messages in there. You could find us, our emails are Jennifer or Mariano at makergrowth.com. So feel free to reach out to us there. And then to really dive into the details of the Maker life, you could go to forum.makerdao.com. And that's where you could find literally everything that was touched on today in great detail, and all the new proposals and conversations taking place in the community. So we would love to hear from this community. I think both Mariano and I are both personally really excited about the creator space, and would love to work with you guys more closely. So this was a lot of fun. Thanks for having us.
Great, then thank you so much. We'll share the Twitters and the links across, and a pleasure to speak and host with you, Mariano and Jen. Thank you so much. Bye, guys.